My name is Alex McBrairty. I am a fitness coach now entirely online, but I've been in the industry for 13 years. And that stemmed from my personal weight loss transformation of nearly 100 pounds over the course of 15 months when I was much, much younger in my late teenage years. I've now kept that weight off for 17 years and counting. And now my profession, of course, is fitness and predominantly using psychology to change our habits, our beliefs, our mindsets, and our behavior to see the weight loss that we want to see and be able to keep it off forever. So, my background is in psychology. That's what my college degree is in, specifically in mindset and motivation, which is going to play a big role in everything we talk about today. So, you're in the right spot if you want to learn a little bit more about the social dynamics when we start to change our lifestyle habits. And in a nutshell, that's exactly what we're talking about today. So, I want you to think for a second. If you're here, you're like you're going through your own lifestyle changes. And I want you to sort of brainstorm for a moment if you've ever had a moment where someone close to you, it could be a spouse, partner, a close friend, a relative, family member, coworker, who when you began your journey, you naturally assumed they were going to be very supportive. And they might have been verbally supportive at the beginning stages of that journey. But then as you really got into making those changes to your lifestyle, to your eating habits, to your exercise habits, to how you spent your free time, did you notice that they started to actually become less supportive? And it may not have been outright or explicitly unsupportive of you, but they were sort of beneath the surface. They started making underhanded comments, or they started offering you more junk food in the case of food choice. And there's just sort of this weird dynamic where they feel like they're working against you, or they have become an extra barrier to the changes that you want to make and to the goals that you want to accomplish. And if that has ever happened to you, which again, I'm assuming it has since you're here, what you're experiencing is something called social sabotage. And this is exactly the topic that we're going to talk about today. And what my goal for you is by the end of this webinar workshop is for you to not only be able to recognize when this is happening, but also to understand the psychological mechanisms for why it's occurring. Because the one thing I want to preface everything else we talk about today with is that seldom is this behavior malicious or intentional on behalf of the people that are sabotaging you. Now, sometimes it is. Sometimes there are people for their own reasons, whatever it may be, their own insecurities, whatever, are actively trying to prevent you from achieving your goal. But that's actually more rare than we think. And what's often the case is people are unintentionally sabotaging us for a host of psychological reasons that is both a self protection mechanism for them, but also, as we'll see, sort of a unique way that they're trying to save their relationship with you. And we'll get more into detail about that as we get going. But this is just some things to consider. It's seldom malicious. So, what my goal is for you with this presentation is to be able to understand and recognize when this is happening, but also the psychological mechanism for why it's happening so that you can understand where these people in your life are coming from. Because if you're experiencing social sabotage from these people, from friends, family, spouses, etc., they do care about you and they're important and meaningful in your life. And we want to understand how to navigate that without causing conflict. So that's what we're going to walk away with. Now, if you happen to next to you have a pen and paper or the notes app on your phone, what I encourage you to think about now is any phrases that these people that are close to you in your life might have said that actually were not helpful, or were reminiscent of pulling you in a direction you didn't want to go. So some examples that you might have experienced in the past is you're at a party, a birthday party, and they're serving cake, and you've decided that you don't really want the cake. Maybe it's not worth it to you for the calories. Maybe it's not workable into your day. You've just chosen that you don't want it. And they might come at you with this comment: just one slice isn't going to hurt. Just have a little bit. Or maybe you go out to dinner and you're trying to order something a little bit healthier from the menu, and it's not what you would typically order. And the rebuttal that you get is, come on, one night's not going to ruin your diet, right? They're sort of justifying the decisions that you would have previously made that may have gotten you to where you're at now with your health, and you're trying to change that. Or maybe you're out with friends and you're hanging out with them and they throw this one at you. You're no fun anymore. Like you feel so uptight, or you just can't let loose because you're so strict on your diet. Or maybe you've had this example where I bought your favorite snack, have some, and you've seldom or you've since tried to not have that. So You may have experienced one of these examples. I tried to pick some common ones, but you might have also had, in your own unique way, similar statements thrown at you by someone close to you in your life. So I want you to write that down, or at least think about what some of those are. And as we start to piece together what forms of social sabotage you've been experiencing, so that you can best figure out how to overcome that as we get going here. So, what is the mechanism for social sabotage? And there's really three key things we're going to talk about today. Three precursors to social sabotage happening. Now, it can be some combination of these three items, or it can be one of them individually for one case or another. And I think it's going to make a lot of sense once we explain to you what they are. The first is group rules. As we're going to learn, it's pretty natural for us as humans to form ourselves into groups. Numerous studies have found this. We can see this throughout our entire history of human civilization. We love being formed into groups, this sort of us versus them. And what's interesting about when we get into these groups and how these groups form is they also establish their own individual sets of rules. And as we're going to see, oftentimes those rules revolve around food or how we interact with each other. And when our interactions revolve around food or alcohol, and we stop engaging in those behaviors, we find that we actually start violating the group rules. And that is one of the reasons that we get a lot of pushback from the other members of that group. But the second reason is pride. And no, not your pride, the pride of the other person. Because one thing that we have to keep in mind is when we have signed up to make lifestyle changes, we have chosen that for ourselves. But in the process of changing our lifestyle, we are, because we're not solitary creatures and because we exist in groups, we are inevitably impacting the lifestyle of the people around us. And so when we've chosen the behaviors and it's influencing other people's behaviors and they haven't chosen those changes, then it starts to create a little bit of psychological discomfort. And so sometimes their pride is triggered by the changes that you're making, and that can result in this social sabotage that you might be experiencing. And then the third, and what I find is the most unique and my personal favorite of the three to really think about because of how unique it is something I call the table test. And this is more predominant and specific to romantic relationships, so with your spouse or your partner, but it can still exist to some degree with how friendships form and how we interact with our family. But food becoming a thermometer for the health of our relationship. And so it's what I call the table test. And we're going to lastly talk about what that is and how it plays a role in social sabotage as well. But we're going to start here with group rules. So I alluded to the fact that throughout human civilization, and when you think about it, humans are social creatures. For predominantly survival, we have gotten into groups to look after one another, to engage with one another, to help share resources and safety with one another. And so it's totally natural that we form groups. And that still is true here today. And it is as small as if you can think of your nuclear family or your extended family, but also your social network, your friendship circles. And we can continue to expand this, of course, to be your neighborhood, your community, your city, your state, your country, your continent, right? And at each of these friendship or rather social group levels, there is different customs and norms and rules that some are spoken, and spoken rules could be like laws of society that you're in, for example, but many of them are unspoken rules for how you're supposed to behave and interact with one another. And this can actually prove to be very difficult to navigate and when you're making lifestyle changes. So here's a great example of this. If you're in a group and the thing that you do to spend time with your friends is to go out to restaurants and to eat and to drink, and then that is an established rule for how you spend quality time together. And so when you start to go against that and you start to do something else, you're actually now breaking the rules of your friendship circle. And that is going to cause a little bit of pushback in a very specific way that we're going to talk about here in a second. But not only for survival do we establish group rules, but there's also a psychology concept called social identity theory. And what this means is that, in part, not just for survival do we form groups, but we actually form our sense of self and our personal identity in relation to the other people that we associate with. So this is a really key part to this. When we're in a group and when we're abiding by those groups' rules, it normalizes behavior. So again, if you go back to the prior example where the thing you do with your friends is you go out to restaurants and you eat and you drink, that behavior then has become normal and is considered normal. Now, if you think about a separate friend group where you guys go on hikes together or you participate in recreational sports, maybe it's your pickleball friends or your tennis friends or your golf buddies or whatever the case is, that activity then being physically active is the normal behavior in that group. And so what we find is that when you've established rules in your determined group and you start behaving outside of that because you're changing your lifestyle, changing your eating habits, you're changing your exercise habits, and it begins to violate those group rules, it actually will cause pushback from the people in that group. Now, again, this isn't always conscious, but they will notice that there is a shift in the relationship and they are driven to, for lack of a better term, punish the violating of the group rules by then social sabotage. Okay, by pushing the junk food back on you or by making those comments when you're at the restaurant when you're ordering differently than you normally order. And so a good way to think about this from the example of the movie is on Wednesdays we wear pink, right? From the movie Mean Girls. Classic scene of these sort of in-group rules, which is for these girls, on Wednesdays they wore pink. This was obviously an explicitly stated rule, comically, for the purposes of the plot of the movie, where every Wednesday they were supposed to wear a pink outfit. And if you didn't, then you got punished because now you're violating the rules of that social group. Here's an interesting caveat to this, or an extension of this, is these same people, let's say you have a group and the rule and the norms of your group are to go out to restaurants and eat and drink. And you're now choosing to eat and drink or abstain from drink and eat differently. And now you're experiencing a lot of these underhanded comments that they're giving you as a result of violating those rules. They might make the underhanded comments to you about the change in your habits and being too strict with your diet or eating too healthy or not being fun anymore. And they might see someone who's not a part of your friendship group or not a part of your group dynamics doing the exact same thing and speaking admirably about the other person who's doing the exact same thing that you're doing. But for you, they're judging it, and for them, they're admiring it. And now there's a discrepancy that we have to figure out what's happening. They can admire the changes that a stranger is making, but not one that you're making. And this is something in psychology related to these group rules called the black sheep effect. And what the black sheep effect is this: we've established that we naturally form into groups, and those groups naturally create a set of unspoken rules that you're supposed to follow. And a lot of the sabotage or barrier that we experience from these people that should be supportive of us because they care about us the most, when they're actually pushing back against healthy changes we're making, it's because we're violating the rules. But they can see those exact same changes that someone outside of our group is making as admirable because people who are not in our group are not expected to follow the rules in the same way, right? So this group in the Mean Girls, on Wednesdays we wear pink. When that kid behind them, who's in the, I think maybe a teacher, who's in the gray shirt is not wearing pink, they're not going to judge him for not wearing pink. They're probably going to judge him for something else because they are the Mean Girls after all. But that's beside the point. They're not going to judge him for not wearing pink because he's not in their group and he's not expected to follow their group rules. He's not expected to wear pink. The rest of the girls are in the group and they're expected to follow the rules as membership into that group. So the black sheep effect now is we will view members inside of our group who violate our rules less favorably. We will punish them more than someone outside of our group breaking our group rules because the people that are not in our group are not expected to follow our rules. So the friends and family and spouse partner, they are expecting you to follow certain rules that you're now breaking. And that is why you're experiencing this pushback. So the black sheep effect plays a big role in this as we're changing our lifestyle habits. Now, again, this is totally natural. This is human psychology unfolding in front of us. And this is why you're experiencing this form of social sabotage. So it sucks, but it's not malicious, it's not evil, it's not intentional always. It is just automatic responses to a change in the dynamics of the relationship. The second piece is pride. Now we talked about it was not your pride, it's their pride. So there is a very common concept in psychology called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is this idea. The only thing you have to understand about it is that internally, our thoughts and our beliefs and our actions have to match. They can't be separate. So, as an outside example, if we hold a belief that this behavior is bad, then our actions have to reflect that and we have to refrain from engaging in that behavior. And so, if we take the food case, for example, if we say junk food is bad and I'm no longer going to eat junk food, not the healthiest approach, but common, right? Junk food is bad, I'm not going to eat junk food, then our behavior needs to reflect that. But in the event that our behavior doesn't reflect that and we eat the junk food, then there's a discrepancy because we're telling ourselves we shouldn't be eating this food, but we are actively eating this food. Now, this causes great psychological discomfort. And the way that we personally will resolve that discomfort is to rationalize or essentially change our mindset or beliefs around the behavior in the form of rationalization or justification. So here's an example: junk food's bad, I shouldn't eat it. But now here I am eating a thing of Krispy Kreme donuts because I had a craving. Now I have that psychological discomfort. So to rationalize it, I might come up with a justification like, well, I just had a really productive workout and I need the extra fuel, right? So we're now rationalizing eating the junk food as it's no longer evil because we've earned it, right? Or another example is, well, it's a one-time occasion. It's a special thing. I don't do this all the time, right? So junk food is bad if we do it too much. Now we're rationalizing our eating it by saying it's a one-time event, it's a special occasion. We should be able to enjoy ourselves, right? So this cognitive dissonance is a mismatch between the beliefs we hold and the actions that we're taking, and we resolve any discomfort or mismatch through rationalization. Now, here's where this plays out for the people closest to you. They are likely experiencing cognitive dissonance, especially if they want to make similar changes in their life and they haven't been successful yet. Here's how this works. If they see you making the lifestyle changes, improving your diet, exercising regularly, you're losing weight, you're building muscle definition, you are going down sizes in your clothing, you're building your stamina and your endurance, and you're just generally getting in the best shape of your life, and your mood states are changing, you're happier, you're more productive, you're more energetic. They see all these positive things happening, and they would like something similar for themselves, whatever that may look, but they haven't been able to do it yet. Now they have to deal with the psychological discomfort, the moment of cognitive dissonance, where it's like these things that this person is now exuding are positive, but my actions don't match that belief because I'm not carrying out the same actions. And so to rationalize it, I'm now going to label these actions as no longer beneficial or harmful or no longer good or intrusive to the quality of life that I have now. So now we can start to see the puzzle come together because now you might experience those backhanded comments and that social sabotage because they now are trying to fix or resolve their own psychological discomfort because you're doing the thing they wish they could do. And again, this isn't malicious, this isn't always conscious, but it's a normal psychological reaction. And we call it saving face. So they are resolving their own psychological discomfort by shifting their beliefs around your healthy changes as no longer being good. It's harming their social life, it's harming your health, right? So you're getting too skinny or you look unhealthy or you shouldn't be so rigid with your diet or you shouldn't be so strict with your workout schedule, right? All the comments you've probably heard in one fashion or another is these people resolving their own psychological discomfort. And it's important to recognize this because then we have a better sense of how to handle it. And then lastly, the table test. So here's what I want you to think about with this. The table test. Again, predominantly in romantic relationships, but not always. But for now, let's just take the context of a romantic relationship. So if you're currently in a relationship, I want you to think about when that relationship was starting, the first few dates you went on. If you're not currently in a relationship, think of a past relationship that you got into in the beginning stages, or just imagine for a moment that you're out dating. How do most relationships begin in the early stages? Typically by going out to eat or by grabbing drinks. We're usually consuming something. We're trying new restaurants, we're trying new entrees, we're sharing meals, we're grabbing drinks at the cocktail bars or the dive bars or whatever the case is. And this does something interesting because what's happening is we are essentially developing a relationship with this act of consumption at the epicenter of it. And this plays a very unique role when we start to change the way we consume things, food and beverage. When we begin a relationship through the actions of food and alcohol consumption, those behaviors become a thermometer for the health of the relationship. This is why I call it the table test. I'm going to say that again. When you develop a relationship through food, and then one person starts to change the way that they eat and is no longer indulging in that food, the other half of the partnership can mistake those changes as a decline in the relationship or as a distancing in the relationship. So, this is often why, again, if you're in a romantic relationship now with a spouse or a partner and you used to go out to eat all the time, and now you're pulling back from that to change the way that you consume food to improve your nutrition, they might suggest going out to eat more often. And that's their form of social sabotage or the way that they're presenting an extra barrier because they are trying to get you to go out to eat more. And from your experience, it's this person's not supportive of your health goals. When in reality, from their experience, and again, not always consciously, they are trying to save what they think is a flailing relationship because it feels like you're distancing yourself because those food behaviors were at the epicenter of how this relationship began and is now the thermometer for the health of that relationship. So this is very unique. Again, it's called the table test. If your relationship starts through food, if you decide to change the way you eat, the other person will mistake it as a decline in the relationship. And there's some ways we can resolve this when we get into the solution section of how to resolve all of the social sabotage you might be experiencing. Okay. But for now, we've talked about three key things: the implicit group rules that are created when we're in these groups that we create for ourselves. And this is different for our marriage or our romantic relationships. We'll have different group rules. Then our friendship circles will have different group rules. Our families units will have different group rules. So each one has its own unique set of rules for how it handles food, how it handles exercise, and how it thinks about behavior that now might be being violated by the changes you're making. But we also have the cognitive dissonance, the pride aspect, that they are trying to resolve their psychological discomfort if they do see value in what you're doing, but aren't able to do the actions themselves. And then lastly, again, specifically in the case of romantic relationships, if your relationship begins through food, the table test, then when you change the way you eat, the other person can mistake that as the relationship going downhill, and they will try to fix it by going back to the way things were. So now that we know three common mechanisms for why the sabotage happens, let's talk about types of sabotage. There's two different types. The first is direct. Direct is behaviors or comments that are directly impacting your ability to follow your plan or to change the lifestyle that you want. So it could be direct teasing, some of those statements that we talked about at the beginning of the workshop. Comments like, don't be boring, or it's just one piece, or you can have fun one time, right? These are the type of teasing you might be experiencing. Or guilt trips, right? They might guilt you for not engaging in the food behavior that you normally engaged in. Okay. And again, direct doesn't always mean conscious. Direct in the sense that it is directly impacting your ability to stay consistent with the goals that you've set for yourself. The other type of sabotage is indirect. Indirect is different in that it is not necessarily directly impacting your ability to stay on track, but it is because it is causing extra temptation that might cause you to derail yourself. So, examples of this is just leaving junk food around the house or not respecting the time you've allotted to work out, right? So, some common examples of this that I see in people that I work with is their spouse might bring their favorite snack home to share it with them because they know they love it, even though that person has already stated that they don't want to eat the same junk food anymore. Or if you're a busy parent and you have a very finite window for your workouts around kid schedules and around managing the family home, and your spouse or partner starts to not give you that time to yourself. Maybe they're asking other things, or you're not being tasked with additional chores around the house that is eating into the small workout time that you had, or they're not doing a good job of occupying the kids so that you can have that time for yourself. If they're not respecting your workout time, again, this is an indirect form of sabotage. They're not necessarily directly preventing you from doing the thing you want, but they're creating situations and circumstances that make it harder for you to stay on track. So we have those two different types. Important to acknowledge this. What I would do now, again, if you have that notepad next to you, is start to list maybe different types of direct and indirect sabotage that you've personally experienced. So you can start to get some practice acknowledging and recognizing the different various types that come across in your world. Now we've talked about the different types of social sabotage. We've talked about the different levels, direct and indirect. Now let's get to the part that matters most, the solutions. And I know I might be running a little bit late, but on the plus side, we haven't lost power yet, so we're cruising. There's four key solutions I'm going to leave you with today that you can begin implementing as soon as you walk away from this workshop with the people in your life that you feel like are presenting as barriers. The first, knowing why it happens. That's what we're solving here today. Knowing the underlying psychological mechanisms for why this form of sabotage is happening, and remembering not to label anyone as being the bad guy for doing it. That it's all a product of normal psychological reactions, trying to resolve psychological conflict, or trying to save your relationship. None of which is inherently negative, even though it feels like it's negative to you. So, understanding why it happens is the number one thing we can do to begin recognizing it and shifting gears. The second is to have honest conversations. And I know that sounds really stupidly simple, but you'll be shocked how many people haven't even expressed to the people that are important to them in their life what their goals are or why they're even important in the first place. And so, if the people close to us don't understand the meaning behind the lifestyle changes, if we don't sit them down and tell them, I want to get in shape because I want to start feeling good in my body again. I want to feel confident. I don't want to feel invisible in the world anymore. Whatever your personal reasons are, sharing that specifically with the people close to you can start to shift their understanding of why you're making the changes. Now, even though you might be violating the same group rules, they have a better understanding for why it's happening, and they can be there to better support you. And a very crucial part of these honest conversations is defining both what is and isn't helpful for you. So, if you have a spouse that likes to bring your favorite junk food home as a treat, clearly tell them that that specific action of bringing that food, even though you appreciate it, and even though you see what they're doing and that they're trying to do something nice for you, clearly explaining that it is not a helpful behavior for what you want, and providing some alternative behaviors they can do to support you better is going to help give everyone, put them on the same page so everyone's operating from the same playbook. Okay. So having those honest conversations. But also, again, when we factor into the table test, relationships beginning from food, discovering new activities, discovering new non food activities to enjoy together, especially when a new relationship is forming. But even if it's a long standing relationship, like a family environment where love is typically shown through food, trying to find other activities that you can enjoy together that's not revolving around food can be a great way to start rewiring some of these group rules and some of these dynamics. Okay. So discovering new activities is a very powerful way that you can start to change the landscape of the sabotage you're experiencing. And then lastly, offer invitations for these people to join you in your new lifestyle. They will often say no. Invite them to come to the gym, invite them to try a new recipe, invite them to try a new restaurant that has healthier options, whatever the case is. By inviting them to join you, most of the time they might say no, but eventually and occasionally they will say yes. And now you're recruiting support in a different way because now they're starting to get in the rhythm of your new lifestyle habits. Okay. So when we understand why these things are happening, we can not label anyone the bad guy and we can try to implement better, honest conversations to explain to them why it matters to us, discovering new activities to enjoy with these people. So we start to establish new group rules, new memories, and new ways to enjoy each other, and offering invitations for them to join you in your lifestyle changes. All powerful ways that you can walk away tonight and start implementing. You can walk away and have a conversation. You can walk away and brainstorm some new activities to enjoy the company of the people you care about. You can offer invitations for your next workout or your next meal prep day to have these people join you for it to spend that quality time together in a different fashion. So we talked about three common mechanisms for social sabotage: the natural state of group rules, the psychological discomfort of cognitive dissonance and saving face, the table test, and how the changes in our behavior can cause someone else in our relationship to mistake that as a decline in the relationship, are all common reasons that you are experiencing this sabotage from the people that should be your biggest supporters. And it can happen directly in ways that immediately provide barriers from you trying to achieve your goals, or indirectly creating the circumstances that cause you to derail yourself. And then there's four things we can start doing now, understanding all those mechanisms we talked about, but also having honest conversations that explain what's helpful and what isn't for the new changes you're making, discovering new activities with which to participate with these people, and by offering them invitations to join you. All powerful ways to start changing the landscape of these relationships. Now, if you're listening to all this, I know it was a lot jam-packed. There was a lot of psychology. There was a lot of behavioral changes here. If you feel like it was great, it made a lot of sense, maybe you had a couple of aha moments, but you're still unsure of how to actually start implementing this into your life, into the special sabotage that you're experiencing, the specific ways that you're going through these challenges, what I recommend is scan the QR code there on the screen and book yourself a free consultation call with me where I will sit down with you. We'll go through the details of what you're experiencing and we will come up with a game plan to start implementing some of these positive changes to reduce the amount of sabotage that you're experiencing. Again, no catch with that. I just want to help you out. Get on a call with me. You can book it there when it's convenient for you so we can figure out how best to implement these changes and improve your overall support system. I didn't do too half bad. I'm 4 minutes behind schedules. If you're still with us, I appreciate you sticking it out a little bit late. Our power stayed on. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to respond to the follow-up email that I send out that will have the recording. And I know I ran out of times not to answer any of the Q&As that I saw coming through during the presentation. So I will be sure to answer your Q&As in the follow-up email. But if you have anything that you want to reach out to me about, scan the QR code, book that free consultation call, or respond to that email that I send out. I hope you found this insightful. I hope you found it helpful. And I hope you now feel more prepared to understand why this social sabotage happens, why these people are less supportive than we expect them to be, and ways that you can begin fixing that for yourself.